In this video, we're going to take a look at using Blender with the renderset add-on from the command line. We will not go over command line or terminal basics because there are better tutorials out there for that, but this will still be a practical video. Really anyone can follow along and just replicate the steps here. For the purposes of this demonstration, I have my Blender installed, the portable version of Blender 4.0 installed directly on the C drive to make the paths easier to follow. It's as such as you see on the screen. If I go to the C drive, there's a Blender 4.2 Windows x64 folder with Blender inside it. I'll be using the Windows PowerShell terminal, but really this would work similarly in CMD, VS Code, or really any terminal emulator. Now, before we start running commands, we have to prepare two Python files we will use later on. These are copied directly from the renderset documentation, and they serve as nice starting points that you can further develop into complex deployments. Let's take a look where they can be found in the documentation. So in the renderset documentation, if you go to Advanced Topics and Headless Rendering, you can also read all these contents instead of watching the video, but if you scroll down, you will see contents of a file called renderset render current. So I just copied it like this with Ctrl C, and I went to my Blender 4.2 folder, and I created a new text file called renderset render current. Opened it with VS Code, but you can really use any editor you want. And here I just pasted the contents. So this is exactly what I got from the documentation. I did the same thing with renderset render all. Now the render current Python file will render just the one context that's active in the blend file, while render all will render everything that's included in renderset as render all. In other words, it's checked in the renderset panel. Let's quickly take a look at what these scripts are doing. So in the renderset render current script, we get the renderset context index of the currently active renderset context. Then we look up the context by the index. We append a handler. This is really a technical detail, so the renderset can move the data to the final output there. If you don't do this, renderset won't be able to do its job. And then we run an API function on the renderset context called render, which is all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. And as a last step, we clear the handler we added previously and print out where we rendered the contexts. And in the renderset render all, it's just a little bit more complicated. We have a set of output paths, so we can gather everything we output from all the contexts, and instead of just looking up the current context index, we go over all of them. And for each context, we check, is the button checked? Is it included in render all? If it's not, we skip it. Otherwise, we do basically the same steps as in the render current for that context. We append the output paths, or we make a union in the set with the output paths and the existing ones. And then as a last step, we output every single path we wrote to. Okay, now that the preparation is done, we can start running commands. Go back to the Blender 4.2 Windows folder and right-click in an empty space and click Open in Terminal. This is going to open this black box, which is the Windows PowerShell terminal, and we can start running commands. It's going to be in the folder where you opened it, in our case in the Blender 4.2 Windows x64 folder. If you type dir and press enter, it's going to list all the files in that folder, and as you can see, it includes blender.exe and also our renderset renderall.py and renderset rendercurrent.py, which we created earlier. If you type /blender.exe, we would be able to start Blender. We're not going to be doing that now, but we'll run a similar command, which is blender-exe-help, because we want Blender to tell us which command line arguments we can use. And if you type enter, Blender is going to output its command line help, which is all these commands. You can look them up in the documentation. We're not going to go over that here. I just wanted to showcase how you can run Blender from the command line. So now let's start running our scripts. So again, we're gonna do /blender.exe -- background, which is one of these command line arguments. It means Blender will run in the background without the GUI, which is what we want. --python, and then renderset render current.py. So once we type enter, Blender is going to start in the background without the GUI, and it'll start our Python script which we created earlier with the contents copied from the documentation. So Blender is starting now and rendering, in this case rendering an empty cube. And if we go to the C renders new context, we can see the results. So let's do that now. Gonna go to this PC, C renders and new context. And here's 17:15, which is the time right now. We can see the image, so it rendered a cube. So why is this? The documentation has more details about this. What happened was we ran the script, but we rendered the default cube, the startup file in Blender. What we need is to open a real scene that we can render. Alright, so let's use the up arrow, which is going to give us the same command that we ran last time, and let's make adjustments to it so we open an actual file that we want to render. So let's use the arrow keys to go just behind the -- background, and this is where we're going to type in the path that we want Blender to open. In our case, it's going to be C users Martin desktop test blend, and again we press enter. So now it's going to load up the file, and after it finishes loading the file, it's then going to run our Python script. And as you can see, it's rendering the current context in that file. So because this file had a slightly different setup, it rendered into a different path. Once we navigate, you can see that it rendered two images, an EXR and a JPEG, which is exactly what we would expect. So how do we go about rendering multiple contexts, not just the one, the current, which we did up to now? Again, we'll use the up arrow to get the last command we ran. And instead of using the renderset render current script, we're going to change the current to all and press enter. And this is going to render all the contexts that are in that file, which is 3 contexts in total. So there you have it. All 3 contexts rendered, one of them an animation and 2 of them a still image, and the results are again stored on the drive. Thank you very much for checking out this video. I hope this helps you get started rendering from the command line with Blender and renderset. This was by no means exhaustive. There are many more details we haven't covered, and if you have a complicated setup that you need help with, feel free to contact us. We would be happy to do contract work setting up renderset, flamenco, or command line rendering for your studio.